Alright, doing a quick audio check. Alright, doing a quick audio check. Sounds good. Alright, doing a quick audio check. Sounds good. Okay, I'm going to get started here in a minute. I'm just going to send the link out to a few people here. And we'll go ahead and do these little updates. I'll go ahead and do these little updates. I'll go ahead and do these little updates. And try to get started here in maybe the top of the hour. Okay. Give people a few minutes to get in here. Like I said, I'm probably going to start my update at the top of the hour at 5 p.m. So we'll go into more detail. Like I said, I'm going to wait just a few minutes to get some people in here in the feed. Everyone can see my dashboard here. It doesn't look like there's going to be any tremendous changes in kind of what was discussed last night. So that's good, of course. But there are a few changes, which, like I said, that's when we're going to go ahead and start at 5. Or, see a few people already coming in. We'll go ahead and get started. Anyone that comes in late, I mean, I'll keep this link up. I won't be creating a new video for it. This will just be the one to share. Will be this link. Since I didn't have to spend a bunch of time fighting with Windows this time. So anyway, starting off with the satellite, as I usually like to do. The satellite presentation looks a lot better than it did this time yesterday. We have a much more well-defined eye on Hurricane Delta, and seeing some lightning flashes in the eye wall, which it was completely devoid of that yesterday when we were looking at this, if you recall. This is just showing where lightning flashes are occurring from being detected by satellite. And as has been stressed a few times, it's a very big hurricane. We have thunderstorms associated with the outer rain bands of it, like way up into Louisiana, even though the center hasn't even gotten to the same latitude as the Rio Grande, the mouth of the Rio Grande yet. So very large hurricane. This surface observation up here, probably an oil platform or something, already measuring sustained winds of 30 knots, about 35 miles an hour. The caveat being sometimes these platforms out here, it's not the standard 10-meter height above the ground or water, as it were. Sometimes, so this could be higher up than normal, but nevertheless, pretty strong winds occurring well out ahead of the storm this time. And again, we compare that to, say, Hurricane Laura, which was a much more compact storm than this was. So here's the latest Hurricane Center advisory. The biggest change is that Delta is strengthening again and is actually back up to a Category 3 hurricane. They set the intensity at 100 knots, which is 115 miles per hour. So again, that makes it a Category 3, as it was before landfall on the Yucatan Peninsula. The forecast track philosophy hasn't changed a whole lot. Still going to go kind of due north before making that turn back to the northeast as it's picked up by a upper level trough. And then in terms of the intensity, there is continued strengthening expected for at least another 12 hours or so, and it's already 115 miles an hour. So looking at it getting a little stronger, and then right before landfall, we should start to get some weakening. Now, one concern I have, and I think the Hurricane Center expresses here, is there's not a lot of time for it to weaken if it were to keep strengthening. And we're only 24 hours from landfall, so yesterday they had it landfall at 105 miles an hour. Look at where they're up to now. They're now showing landfall at 120. That's kind of a mid-range Category 3 hurricane now, right there. So again, that goes back to what was I saying yesterday of, yes, we have 105 in there, but what is the average error? Up to 15 miles an hour, even 48 hours before landfall. So again, why it's always a good practice to kind of prepare for one category higher than forecast. So showing it peaking at 125, which is a high-end Category 3 before weakening slightly prior to landfall. They do note, however, in their forecast discussion up here that a short period of rapid intensification remains possible given the current trends, although they do point out that some of the models that they use to kind of they have one model that gives them kind of a probability of rapid intensification, and it doesn't sound like that model is particularly aggressive with that rapid intensification occurring, but just given the recent satellite trends and the good satellite presentation, it is a possibility. So a high-end Category 3 at landfall is not out of the question. Now going and looking at some of these graphics here, starting with just your traditional cone graphic. Let me turn on the center line. So that's what they're looking at in terms of the track. So it's a little bit west of where we were yesterday. Remember yesterday we were kind of near that Cameron, Vermilion Parish line. It's shifted slightly to the west since then, but again, look how big this hurricane is, and that wind field is going to only get larger as it encounters that shear and moves north. So that small shift in the track towards the west is not going to be a tremendous difference for Lafayette. Now, it could be the difference between, the inner eye wall and not, so it could be important, but, the point is it's still close enough where that's a little uncomfortably close to Lafayette, especially with Lafayette almost for sure going to be on the east side of the storm. I can pull up real quick, I forgot to load these, but our forecast model graphics here, just to give you an idea. So they're very tightly clustered, and if you look, almost the entire guidance envelope is positioned in between, say, about Intracoastal City over towards Cameron. So it's starting to look increasingly unlikely that a hit towards, say, the Sabine River or even west of there is looking very unlikely at this point. So I'm thinking at this point that the center is almost for sure going to track somewhere between Lafayette and Lake Charles, which would, of course, put Lafayette on the east side, the right side, or the side where we tend to have the higher winds in it. So certainly, again, Lafayette is not going to be in a good spot for this. Looking into some of the other guidance, again, you see it's very tightly clustered. It's actually pretty remarkable how tight it is, even as it moves up into the Midwest and becomes a post-tropical system. And then just some of those GFS ensembles. It might be just a little bit to the west of where the Hurricane Center track is, but again, I think I'm personally pretty confident that this is going to be going somewhere between Lafayette and Lake Charles. Again, putting Lafayette on the east side, or what tends to be the more severe side of the hurricane. Going back to those Hurricane Center graphics, I always like the wind probability. So it's pretty much a slam dunk for tropical storm force winds if you are anywhere between Baton Rouge and the Sabine River. That's pretty much a certainty at this point. And then going to hurricane force winds, right here, Lafayette is in about the 50% chance of hurricane force winds, which is up from where we were yesterday. Yesterday we said it was about a 30% chance. I tend to like these wind speed probability graphics because they take into account the size of the storm, the uncertainty in the forecast, whereas the cone is just where is the center going to track, and then the cone is static just based on the historical error from the Hurricane Center, whereas these wind probability graphics are actually a dynamic product, if you will, where they'll adjust the spread of this cone on these products right here, kind of based on their confidence in the forecast, the spread of the models, the size of the storm, etc. on there. And they have this text-based wind probability graphic, which I like a lot. And if I pull up Lafayette, see they're showing a 94% chance. So the numbers outside the parentheses, that is at a given time. The probability of tropical storm force winds, those times are up here at the top. The parentheses, the cumulative probability up to the point up there. So cumulatively, what I usually do is just look at the far right number. So over the next, next 5 days, there's a 94% chance of tropical storm force winds in Lafayette and a 31% chance of hurricane force winds. So I guess that 50% area was maybe just southwest of Lafayette. Just looking at this text product, because this is derived from those other things we were looking at. And then Baton Rouge, 78% chance of tropical storm force winds and a 7% chance of hurricane force winds. But going back to some of the graphics there, also like the time of arrival with the most likely time. That's pretty much unchanged from where we were yesterday. We're looking at conditions starting to deteriorate sometime late Friday morning into Friday afternoon. And then just going back to the cone based on the position they have there. 1 p.m. Friday, the center is off the coast. By 1 a.m., it's all the way up to practically Alexandria. So that is one good thing, is this will be moving pretty quick. So that probably means the worst conditions for the Lafayette area will be during the evening Friday. So actually probably not much more than 24 hours from now is when we'll be seeing the worst conditions in Lafayette. So for people in Lafayette or Lake Charles, if anyone there is watching, really this evening is the time to complete anything you still have to do for the storm. If you're boarding up any windows, if you make a last-minute run to the grocery/liquor store, now is the time to do that, because tomorrow things are going to start going downhill, and probably pretty quickly. It's not just going to become one of those slow deteriorations, given how fast the storm is going to be moving. Finally, looking at rainfall on here, I really wish they put the county or parish boundaries on here to make things a little easier. But still looking at, 4 to 6 inches of rain for the Lafayette area, maybe 6 to 10, very close to the center. That's one good thing. As fast as the storm will be moving, we're not going to pick up a tremendous amount of rainfall. I mean, any hurricane is pretty much guaranteed to drop 6 inches of rain on you. But given the speed that this will be moving at, we're certainly not looking at one of those, situations like Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Florence where there's like 3 feet of rain. That's looks highly unlikely at this point, given how quick it'll be moving. And then finally on here, I guess I'll pull up the storm surge graphic on here. Not really a problem for places like Lafayette, but along the coast, 7 to 11 feet of storm surge in Vermilion Bay. So Sycamore Point, Intracoastal City. Lots of surge problems expected down there. I mean, that's going to be pretty significant in terms of the storm surge. Moving on to some of the models, we looked at the little spaghetti plots, but now kind of looking at the graphics here. So notice, first of all, you can see that expansive wind field we've been talking about. I mean, notice the tropical storm force winds, which are roughly kind of where it starts turning red on this color scheme. Look how wide this is. Much larger than Hurricane Laura was. The dark yellows are the hurricane force winds. And so there it is. This is at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening, so about 24 hours from now, getting very close to the coast. And then by 1 in the morning, almost up to Alexandria. So I'm expecting the worst conditions based on this for the Lafayette area during that time, probably after 7 o'clock, before midnight, so during the evening. But it's in and out pretty quick. I mean, look at this. By daybreak, the center is way up here. The storm is rapidly weakening. Probably still be a little breezy down in Lafayette at that point, but the worst of it is only going to be a few hours. It isn't looking like something that's just going to rage all night long, but we'll see for sure. And a note here, the winds tend to be a little underdone on these GFS plots because it's not a very fine resolution. This is one of the global models. But for the higher resolution winds, we can look at our high resolution NAM-NEST model, which first I always like to look at the simulated reflectivity. Now, Don't take this as pure gospel when it comes to the track of the storm. That's not what this model excels at. What it excels at is kind of letting you see what the structure of the storm looks like, what some of those winds look like. Though it does look like the center is pretty close to where the hurricane center track is. Kind of approaching the Cameron, Vermilion Parish border there. It looks like it's showing landfall right around 10 o'clock. And then moving north. And notice on the back side of it's pretty open. That's going to be a product of the cooler air wrapping into it, as well as the increasing wind shear. Another reason we're not going to get a bunch of rain is it'll be very asymmetrical. And then it just falls apart as it continues up the Mississippi Valley. This model will also give me forecast wind gusts. So if I look at that, just to get an idea of what we're looking at for the Lafayette area. So it looks like here it's showing wind gusts around, let's see if it'll load here, there we go, about 60 knots, that's about 70 miles per hour. So this is showing wind gusts, you know, right around that, a little over, or rather just shy of hurricane force there, whereas it's, you know, over 80 knots. Down along the coast, but I'm noticing this model is a little weaker than what the Hurricane Center is forecasting at landfall. So this could potentially be a little underdone. I wouldn't take any of this as gospel. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what the center looks like. And then going on to what the Hurricane Center, sorry, the local forecast office in Lake Charles is showing, but of course this is all based on the Hurricane Center forecast. They're keeping the strongest winds back around Lake Charles down into Vermilion and Cameron parishes. Lafayette's just on the outside. Now what this means is there's my interpretation and kind of historical, I guess, from just kind of seeing how this product verifies, this kind of turns out to be like what kind of wind gust to expect. And so they're basically saying prepare for hurricane force wind gusts for Lafayette, with major hurricane force gusts possible just to the west there. There's a storm surge threat graphic, so you know, major storm surge flooding down there along where the center makes landfall, Vermilion Bay. Flooding rain, not a huge threat. Some river, I mean, still you're going to be getting 6 to 10 inches of rain in some areas in 24 hours. So there will be some flooding, but probably nothing, you know, catastrophic. And then, of course, there's always a tornado threat with these hurricanes as they make landfall, but I think that the tornado threat will actually be greater going towards Baton Rouge and New Orleans. In my experience, it tends to be something that's more in the periphery of the storm than right in the center, though there can be tornadoes even near the center. Lafayette Parish is under a hurricane warning, and they're saying that right now they're expecting peak winds of 40 to 50 sustained with gusts of 65. That is a little shy of hurricane force, but again, it could be a little stronger than that if we got a little more intensification than they're showing right now. That's when they're saying potential for winds, they're saying the potential here is up to, Category 3 intensity. So while the more likely scenario is kind of that high-end tropical storm, low-end hurricane force, there's a little more uncertainty in the intensity just given those satellite trends that the Hurricane Center discussed. So, I don't think this is, I'm still not thinking this is going to be like some, major knockout blow for Lafayette, like what Lake Charles saw at Hurricane Laura, nothing like that. But, this is still something, even if we're just dealing with, air quotes here, only a Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane, that's still enough to blow down lots of trees, including knocking trees onto buildings, knocking out power for an extended period. I mean, Hurricane Gustav was only a Category 2 at landfall, 100-mile-per-hour peak winds, and there were parts of Baton Rouge without electricity for 2 weeks with that. And if anyone remember the pictures from Baton Rouge from that, and again, this could actually be a little stronger than that. So just because we're not seeing the high-end Category 4 type situation, I don't want to understate it and just dismiss it as only a Cat 1 or Cat 2 hurricane. Just scrolling down this a little more, again, storm surge not expected to be a problem for Lafayette. 2 to 4 inches of rain locally, higher amounts, because again, it'll be moving fast And it looks like from kind of those simulated radar graphics that it'll be in and out pretty quick, with the backside kind of opening up as the wind shear starts to affect the hurricane. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the tornado potential. So just to kind of wrap everything back up here, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the little chat that I have. But just to kind of wrap up on things is, personally, I'm not seeing this being like some like I said, really high-end scenario that's going to be completely devastating or something. I don't think it's going to be nearly as strong as, say, Hurricane Laura was, but still strong enough where you're going to want to have things very secure. It's going to be more than enough to knock over lots of trees, including in the Lafayette area, knock out lots of power lines. So you're going to want to be prepared for all those situations. Again, for timing, conditions starting to deteriorate in Lafayette, probably late morning around lunchtime is going to start going downhill, with the worst conditions looking to be during the evening tomorrow. Probably between sundown and midnight will be the worst conditions in Lafayette, and then it rapidly improving as the center moves off to the north, and things kind of settling down as we go into Saturday morning. So anyway, that is all I had. I don't see any questions in the live chat. You can either comment on this video, send me an email, or contact me through any of the usual means if there's something I missed, or if you have any other questions. This will probably be the last one of these I do. We'll see, because I have plans tomorrow evening, and it will already be coming ashore most likely. By the time, so this will probably be the last one I do for Hurricane Delta on YouTube. Anyway, thanks for watching.